Joining me now for more on this is State Department spokesperson PJ Crowley. Mr. Crowley, we've been hearing President Obama say time and again that the dots were not connected, that the intelligence was there and was in fact in the possession of all of the US agencies. How much is the State Department to blame for not acting more aggressively on the information it got in Nigeria?
Well, I think as the President said, this was a system failure. The State Department, along with other agencies of government, bear a share of responsibility for this. But in Nigeria, we did act quickly once the father came to see us to express concern about his son and his potential contacts with extremist groups and his potential travel to Yemen. From there, towards the end of November, what we call a Visa's Viper report was issued to the relevant intelligence, law enforcement, and other agencies involved in combating terrorism, and that information was aggressively shared.
So where was the failure then? Who failed to act on the intelligence that you passed on?
Well, as the President said, there were different streams of intelligence, and all of those streams of intelligence didn't get to the right place so that we made the correct assessment of the threat that this individual made. So that had all of that information that was available in different parts of the system, had that all come together in one place at one time, we may have made a different risk assessment of this individual, and for the State Department that might have meant prior to his boarding the flight on December 25, we might have actually revoked his visa, which we did not, because we do these things as a whole of government in an integrated fashion. We did not receive a recommendation to revoke this visa, so as a result, this individual was able to fly on December 25 and obviously attempt this attack.
But obviously many agencies very slow to react then, but very quick to issue new directives and new measures in the aftermath of this incident. Several countries, 14 countries on a list where nationals will be subjected to additional scrutiny at airports while coming to the United States. Seems to many people like this is simply a knee-jerk reaction. Is there anything more to it than that?
Well, actually, I think we share the same objective. There were perhaps 270 individuals on that flight on December 25. Not all of them were American citizens. Along with the other countries of the world, we share the hope that people can travel to the United States from the United States and do so safely. So we are taking some specific steps involving the citizens and airports of specific countries where we believe that either these countries are state supporters of terrorism, Cuba would be a good example of that, or where we have concerns that there are extremist groups in those countries that might pose a danger to aviation. Now, this is something that we're going to work very closely with these countries, with the international aviation community. We'll continue to reassess this as we go forward.
But what's new here fundamentally, because many people suspect this list to have been in existence for many years. It is simply being perhaps publicized at this stage at the risk of alienating a lot of countries that see it as being discriminatory.
Well, I don't think it's discriminatory at all, in the sense that these are based on our renewed threat assessments of specific dangers posed in specific parts of the world. We're going to work with those countries. In some cases, it may be better intelligence cooperation. In some cases, there may be technology that can assist. Over time, as we continue to improve our ability to keep the aviation system, the global transportation system safe, we'll adapt the measures that we've announced recently.
PJ Crowley, spokesperson for the U.S. State Department, thanks very much for joining us.
A pleasure, Ghida.
And now we're joined by Jack Rice, who is a former CIA special agent and also a field operations officer, as well as a former trial lawyer. Jack Rice, President saying that the information was there, obviously, and someone failed to act on it. Was this a situation of mere breakdown of communication between all these intergovernmental agencies, or was there something more to it? Perhaps someone somewhere willfully suppressing the information they had?
I'm not so sure if it was willful. I think what it was more likely incompetence than it was something else. If we look at what has happened in the past, the President has already said that it was a human failure as well as a systemic one. And I think it was both of those things. The acquisition of material wasn't the problem. The acquisition of the intelligence, they actually had it. The Americans had it. Their problem is they didn't put it all together. But what's most troubling about this is the exact same problem that the Americans had after after 9/11, and with all of the things that we have done, apparently we haven't learned that lesson. The failures are still there.
But they may have had the information, but they failed to share the information, didn't they? But yet you hear John Brennan, the President's assistant on counterterrorism, saying it wasn't a failure to share.
Well, see, I disagree completely. I mean, you can't not fail. You can't not share it and then say it's not a failure. My response is, what the Americans did is after 9/11, they created something called the National Counterterrorism Center. This was designed to take all of the information from CIA, NSA, all of the other sort of spy organizations and put them together and sort of collect all of the dots and put this together like a puzzle. But apparently, they either didn't get all of the information or didn't understand it or didn't connect it as they should. I don't care how you want to shine this up, that is a failure, whether Brennan wants to say so, whether President Obama wants to say so.
And I know you believe the system is broken and needs to be fixed desperately. Has President Obama laid out a convincing case as to how this can be done?
He's done some things. I mean, he's put this at several levels in terms of what we should do in terms of focusing on certain countries. In this case, they're talking about they should have looked more closely at Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. That was a mistake. They should have been able to use all of the intelligence and put it together. That was a mistake. And really the analysis and synthesis of it, that was a mistake. However, I fundamentally disagree with what the president is doing when it comes to targeting these 14 countries. I think it's simplistic, and I think it actually hurts the cause of Americans who need to reach out into the world rather than isolate themselves from it.
Full body scanners at some airports used selectively with nationals from 14 countries you don't think will help very much. How about these airstrikes into Yemen? Is that going to be a solution?
Well, see, but the problem is this, is that if what you're literally doing is you're saying, okay, if there is a terrorist that came from one country, that means that everybody who's from the same country may be a terrorist too? I mean, how simplistic is that? Let's give you one example. Nigeria. There has been one person tied to terrorism, and that would be this 23-year-old Nigerian. There are 135 million people from Nigeria. What do you think it does to the other 134,999,000? They're going to look at this and say, you see, this is the Americans doing the stupid things they've done in the past again.
And now the Yemenis are saying that he was in fact recruited not in Yemen, but in England.
Well,
so what do you do then?
We have seen that same point in the past. I mean, the Brits have really tried hard here to deal with radicalization, but you bring up a great point. One of the problems that the Americans and the West face are things like radicalization. Just like this Nigerian, just like this young doctor in Jordan, it is a perfect example. But when the Americans find a way to isolate themselves and they start targeting people from the Middle East simply because they're Muslims or because they're from the Middle East, it actually drives that radicalization further, and that makes it that much more difficult.
Jack Rice, former CIA special agent, thank you very much.
Thank you.